morning again. You already know me, so I want to introduce myself again. In the next 20 minutes or so, I will talk about the green energy scenarios for Hungary, which we developed together with the Wuppertal Institute this spring. It was already mentioned by Benedek too. This research was done by mostly by my colleague Fanni Sáfián, who studied the modeling methodology in Denmark, and she's also here in this room, so you can ask the tough questions from Fanni, but I will do my best too. This work was commissioned by the Greens in the European Parliament and was carried out in close cooperation with the Wuppertal Institute and Energiaklub. The main findings and all the assumptions are explained in a detailed way in this report, which you can also get here if you need in English, and it is also available online in Hungarian and in English too. The main goal of this modeling work was to critically review the national energy strategy of Hungary, which was made in 2011, and to provide some information and new ideas and input for the Hungarian decision makers who define the national energy strategies. Just a few sentences about the energy policy and energy system of Hungary. It was also mentioned by Béla in the previous presentation. Somehow I have some slightly different figures, but we will probably find an explanation for that. You can see the energy sources we use in the Hungarian energy system. You can see it's mostly natural gas, oil, and nuclear energy. Our energy dependency is quite high. Béla, you showed a different figure, but I guess this is the official Eurostat figure, excluding the nuclear energy. So that's the reason for the difference. And as you see, for example, for natural gas, our dependency is extremely high because Hungary is very poor in conventional energy sources. We are rich in renewables, though. Still, the share of renewables in our final energy consumption is quite low. Still, at the moment, it's around 9.5%, and well, you can say it's not that bad. Our national aim, the national goal, is around 14% by 2020, but if we look at the mixture of the renewables we use, you can see it's in Hungarian. I will explain. In the circle outside, you can see the most recent data from 2014, and it shows that around 70% of the renewables we use in Hungary is biomass. And I would like to highlight the very low percentage of solar and wind energy in this renewable mix. You have to look for the purple and the light blue colors. So you see it's very low, especially if we compare it to all the potentials we have, and which was also mentioned by Béla. The Hungarian energy policy is unfortunately mostly focused on building a new nuclear power plant for Hungary by Russian technology and Russian financial sources, and the development of renewables is unfortunately of secondary importance right now in Hungary. And if the official energy strategy of the government would be realized, we would have the power capacities. The power capacities by 2030 would look like this. You see, we would have the majority of the power generation capacities in the south of Hungary, in Paks, where we have an existing nuclear power plant, and the new one would be built at the same spot according to the plans. So this would be a very, very centralized energy system if it would be realized, which we don't think. Let me introduce the work we made with the Wuppertal Institute. Just the most important highlights and outcomes and assumptions, and a couple of words about the methodology. We used different bottom-up models. The final energy consumption of the industry and services sector was defined and modeled by the Wuppertal Institute's own model. The residential heat demand was defined by Energiaklub's building stock model. The transportation sector was modeled also by Energiaklub in cooperation with the Technical University of Budapest. And the electricity and heat, the balance of production and consumption was made by the Energy Plan software, which was developed in Denmark by the Aalborg University, and it is widely used all around the world by different experts, researchers, and also governments, as far as I know, for modeling the whole system, energy system for a country, and it can analyze the system in hourly resolution for a year, and it balances the demand and the supply side of the energy system. So this is very simple how it works. This is a more complicated chart. I will not go into details. The main thing is that the researchers have to develop and define the demand side of the energy system. It should be put in the software. We have to define the mixture of the power plants which we want to operate in the country for a given year, and then the software balances the demand side and the supply side, and we get the fuels which is used by the system, and it calculates a lot of things. You can find a detailed description in the report. We had 4 scenarios. The nuclear scenario is basically the same scenario which can be found in the National Energy Strategy. It contains a new nuclear power plant, and yes, there is not much improvement in renewables. I will talk about it later. We had a green scenario. We didn't aim for a 100% renewable scenario, but we have quite a high share of renewables in the end, and we have 2 intermediate scenarios. There were some parameters which were the same for all the 4 scenarios, and there were some assumptions which were different for each scenarios, mostly the level of energy efficiency, the renewable energy use, and the trends in transportation. We made some different assumptions. And the new nuclear power plant appears only in the nuclear scenario. As I mentioned, as this is according to the national energy strategy, and this is basically our business as usual scenario. Here you can see the installed capacities in this scenario for 3 different years. 2010, it was our initial year, and 2030 and 50. As you can see, by 2030, the nuclear capacities almost double, according to this scenario. And then by 2050, the nuclear capacities fall again because our existing nuclear power plant will be shut down by that time. And as you see, the share of the significance of natural gas and gas power plants will remain about the same in this scenario, and there will be some growth in wind and PV capacities, but not very much. So this is the official Hungarian strategies scenario. The demand and the final energy use is increasing in this scenario, and there is no significant improvement in efficiency. In the green scenario, there is no nuclear power plant. The focus is on energy efficiency and renewable power production, and we assumed a decrease of energy consumption in all the sectors, which is mainly due to an extensive building refurbishment policy. We assume that 50,000 households will renovate their flats each year. We have almost 4 million households in Hungary, and the rate of refurbishment is very, very, very low. It's around a couple of thousand flats each year. So this 50,000 a year would be a really big increase. And we assumed a moderate increase in the number of cars and some decrease in the consumption of the cars. And we also calculated with a more developed electric transportation. These are only some key assumptions. We had a lot of course, we had a lot of assumptions. You can find it in the report. And in this scenario, as you see, by 2050, there are no nuclear capacities in the Hungarian energy system, but wind and solar capacities increase a lot. Yes, and also the coal power plants disappeared from the system. We had 2 more scenarios, intermediate A and intermediate B. The difference is in the consumption level, because in the inter A scenario, the consumption levels are the same as in the nuclear scenario, so there is no decrease in the energy use, but we replaced the nuclear capacities by renewables. And intermediate B it calculates with the decrease in the consumption in all sectors, and also the renewables are prioritized. I mean, the nuclear energy capacities are replaced by renewables. And before I go to conclusions and before I show all the results, I would like to illustrate the difference between the official nuclear scenario and the green scenario. As you see in this chart, on November the 3rd in 2050, if we follow the nuclear scenario, the power production will look like this. On the X, you see the hours of the day, and on the Y, you see the capacities which are working, which are operating on that day. Exactly 36 years ahead, and you see that the majority of the production will be carried out by the nuclear capacities, and conventional power plants, it means all the power plants which are not combined heat and power plants, mostly gas-fired power plants, and the renewables are somewhere on the top. They make rather a small share on that day in the electricity production. While if we follow the green scenario, you see the picture looks different, because in this scenario the priority is given to the renewable energy production. So we will have much more geothermal, wind and PV generation throughout the day, and the conventional energy sources will be applied as a supplement to the renewable production. And you see that you don't see any nuclear in the right chart. So yes, our outcomes look like this. On the left-hand side, you see our real data from 2010, and you see all the 4 scenarios in 2030 and 50. Yes, you see that the nuclear scenario means an increase in the total primary energy consumption by 2050, while the other scenarios mean they reduce the consumption. The green scenario decreases our primary energy consumption by 42% in total, which is quite significant. The share of renewables grow in each scenario. Of course, it grows the most in the green scenario. By 2050, in the green scenario, the renewables in the power production will reach 82%, and in the total primary energy use, they will reach also around 50% in the green scenario. CO2 savings, you see that by 2050, in the green scenario, it is possible to reduce the CO2 emissions by 77% compared to the level of 1990. Yes, we also, Wuppertal Institute also calculated, they tried to estimate the costs of all the scenarios, so how much it will cost to us to follow and develop the different paths for the future. They defined a range of costs. That's why you see low and high at each scenarios. And what you can see on this chart is that the green scenario is basically cheaper than any other scenarios, including the official nuclear and conventional energy source scenarios. Yes, taken into account all the investment costs which is needed for the given scenario, the operation and maintenance costs, the fuel costs, the CO2 emission costs, and also the development need of the grid and transmission and distribution lines. What are the conclusions? For us, this simulation proved that the Hungarian energy system can be working even without a nuclear power plant. The demands can be met in each hour, on each day, with an extended use of renewables and parallelly increased energy efficiency and an extended refurbishment program for the building stock. So these scenarios also, the green one is feasible and technologically possible. It is only the matter of political decision and political will, which path we would like to choose for our country. And certainly we know that further research is needed, especially regarding the grid development, the social benefits of the different scenarios, and the cost efficiency part should be researched further. And with this, I thank you for your attention, and if you have any questions, please ask them. Thank you.